Welcome back to the Fantasy Flex podcast from Action Network and Fantasy Labs. I'm your host, Kev Mahserejian, and I'm joined by Sean Koerner. We're well into our fantasy football coverage this season, so if you've missed anything, just check back in your podcast feed. You can also watch the video versions on Action Network's YouTube channel. In today's episode, we're discussing tight ends we love, tight ends we hate, tight ends we want to plant our flag on now. So if you're looking for tight end sleepers, we've got you covered. So we're going to get into the top 12 ranked tight ends we love. And Sean, lead us off with that very first one.
Yeah. All right, Kev, are you sitting down for this? I actually have, yeah. Are you sitting down? Okay. I have two tight ends
I am sitting down. Yes.
Okay. Brock Bowers and Trey McBride.
No way.
Right. Wow. So I'll make this very simple. And you probably don't need nobody needs me to tell you how good Brock Bowers or Trey McBride are. So it's not about that. But my strategy this year and pretty much every year is to just either take the 2, 3, or 4 studs atop my rankings until there's like a huge drop off. And then if I don't get any of those guys, I just kind of punt the position altogether. And I just roll in the season with a guy I'm high on with some upside. And then I play the waiver wire. So last year, I think those guys were Brock Bowers and Trey McBride. And I said, you know what? If I can't get these guys, screw it. I'm going to punt tight end. I'm going to take either Tyler Warren or Colson Loveland at the end of the draft. Most of my leagues, that's what I did. Worked out just fine. Leagues where I still wasn't able to get Loveland or Warren, I was able to pick up like Tucker Kraft in a league. I was able to pick up Harold Fannin in a few of them, obviously. That 2-3 week stretch with Rondé Gadsden being, a top 5 tight end, had him in that league, and then I dropped him as soon as he cooled off. So it's like, you have to understand that the waiver wire is your friend when it comes to tight end because it's a onesie position. Most people are just going to draft one tight end. There's rare cases you might get somebody that drafts a second tight end. So, 13, 14 tight ends are drafted, meaning there's a ton of guys sitting out there every week that you have access to. And every year, there's a handful of guys that pop up throughout the season that are essentially league winners. So you can play the waiver wire until you end up on a guy that you just can't drop anymore. So I just think tight end position is one where obviously I'd love to have a Bowers or McBride, but if I have the first overall pick, I can't really take Brock Bowers, right? I got to take Jahmyr Gibbs or Bijan Robinson, and then Bowers won't make it back to me. So if I have the first overall pick, I'm basically going, well, I'm not getting Brock Bowers, so I don't force it. But I think having Bowers or McBride does give you an edge if you can get them. But otherwise, I've called it the frozen pond tier. I would say I'd be comfortable getting a Warren or a Colson Loveland in the right spots because I do think those guys have, tight end one overall upside still, but they're still pretty pricey. And I'll get to it in my hate section of why I kind of avoid, the tight end 5 to tight end 12 range. But I think it's pretty simple at tight end for me. It's Bowers or McBride or just roll the dice on the waiver wire, and I've been able to get away with that for years now. Hopefully this year's no different, but that's always kind of my plan.
Yeah, I'm with you. I love Bowers. I love the price on McBride. That's kind of thing. And Bowers, you said, doesn't fall. He does fall to the 2-3 turn in some drafts. Underdog best ball, he's fallen to the 2-3 turn often. He does go late mid second, so it doesn't always happen, but it And then McBride's a staple of the third round. PPR, half PPR drafts that I've done thus far, I've seen McBride available in the mid third, and it's like, yeah, in full PPR, I'm gladly taking McBride. Do you expect a repeat of the 11 touchdown season? Is that like, do you think he could get close? Because it was 1 touchdown, 3 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns to start his career, and then 11. And yes, he has Jacoby, who he cooked with, but do you see anything?
Yeah, he was always way too good. He was always way too good to be a 3 touchdown guy. He's more of a volume guy. I think, I'm projecting him. Let me see where I'm projecting him. I'm projecting him around, 6, 7. I think right in the middle of that. Wouldn't shock me again.
Sorry.
I can't believe
you said it. You said it, not me.
Yeah, so
my apologies.
I think he's going to be right in the middle of that, which is fine. He's, elite even with 6 or 7 touchdowns because he's getting a shit ton of catches and yards. Initially I was kind of worried about, the they might be a little more run heavy with Jeremiah Love there, which I still believe. I was a little bit worried about like tank mode with Carson Beck, starting the last handful of games. But after the Hall of Fame game, you know what? I think they'll be fine, whether it's Brissett or Beck under center later in the season. And it's McBride. I think McBride's a QB proof tight end, so I'm not too worried about him to begin with. But I think Carson Beck looking solid kind of helps my outlook for Cardinal players come playoff time. So yeah, I think McBride, even if he does just get a handful of touchdowns, he's still so elite with yardage and consistency when it comes to tight ends. That's why you and I, when it comes to the Fantasy Pros contest, that's the toughest position to really be consistent ranking because it's so volatile. It's touchdown dependent. That contest, they only take the top 15 scoring tight ends. And oftentimes there's like 5 or 6 guys that finish in the top 15 that weren't even like ranked. They're full back hybrid tight ends that happen to score a touchdown, 1 catch, 8 yards and a touchdown. Boom, you're a top 10 tight end that week. So the position in general is so volatile, so inconsistent. Bowers and McBride kind of buck that trend, and you're pretty much guaranteed a handful of catches, yards, and maybe a touchdown every week. So with those guys, it's just you have such an edge by having a high floor week in, week out with your tight end.
Totally. Look, I'm in on Trey McBride. Mid-third, after last year, you would think he'd be going higher. You would think not a first rounder, but fringing on it like with Bowers. But I mean, how much do we trust rookie Mendoza? I think Mendoza's good. I think Mendoza's good. And I like Bowers. I'm drafting Bowers in the mid-second gladly. The PCL injury after what we've seen with Ricky Pearsall, just like, okay, now I'm a little more trepidatious, but I'm still drafting him. Like, PCLs are scaring me a little more than ACLs now. Drake London had the PCL last year. Brock Bowers had a PCL last year. I know I'm the roto surgeon, but I'm not an actual doctor. I say that often. And, but like you're looking at this, like Dalton Kincaid, he's still dealing with wraps on his knee. He hasn't had corrective surgery. And not to, spoil anything for later, but yeah, PCL does feel scary. And Brock Bowers, I'm fine with not getting Brock Bowers and waiting for McBride around later. It feels very similar. So yeah, I'm with you. Brock, McBride, great picks. And Beck, yeah, pocket passer. I'm not upset. And if Beck somehow doesn't work out, Gardner Minshew's on that team. That's another pretty much volume pocket passer. And you look at that Arizona Cardinals last 3 games after a bye: Jets, Saints, Raiders. That's juicy.
There's Raiders in week 17.
Raiders week 17. So Brock
Bowers
gets the Cardinals.
Versus McBride for all the money.
You might want to draft both. You want one in the flex in a PPR. I don't think that's crazy. You shouldn't, but you can.
You're kind of giving away your positional advantage there.
I get it.
Like in best ball, yeah. But also, well, let me think about that. Nobody else could have a Bowers and McBride at that point. So you're like, it's like Monopoly when you take Broadway and the other, what's the other?
Park? No.
The blue. Yeah, isn't it Park and Broadway?
Park. Yeah, I think it's Park.
Yeah, you
Park
just have a monopoly of tight ends. And then you draft Blake Corum later. Kyron misses time, and there you go. You have a top 5 running back now, too.
There you go. That's how it all works out. I'm excited because if I do get one of those two, it's set and forget. You draft one tight end, you don't even have to worry about a backup. The only time you're ever going to have another tight end on your roster is their bye week. McBride's is week 14. So you have leverage too with an extra roster spot. You don't have to worry about like, oh, it's a bad matchup for tight end XYZ later. So I totally get what you're saying. And the 2 tight ends I'm going to mention right now, I mean, the first one's Colston Loveland. That's tight end 3 off the board right now. Like I'm not going crazy here and going too deep into the weeds for my tight end. Luther Burden has the groin injury. Rome Odunze is coming off of the foot fracture that shaped his foot weird. We still don't know how that's going to impact him in season. And Loveland, oh my God, those last 5-6 weeks into the playoffs, he looked like a wide receiver 1. He didn't look like a tight end. Just like McBride, just like Bowers. On the season, tight end 18 in points per game. But yeah, he had sadly his best game, I think, of the season. or his best game in that last stretch came in week 18, which doesn't really count. But again, he played in the playoffs. He dominated. He had a 30-point week midseason. We saw the upside. It's tied to Caleb Williams, who is growing, getting better. It's the Madden cover. Maybe the curse messes them up. Maybe he doesn't. But he's clearly a star in the making. Maybe that's this year. Maybe it's in the future. But with Burden's risk right now, with Rome's general risk, he doesn't really – I think he's missed the second half of the season or parts of the second half of the season in each of the first 2 years of his career. And if you look at their wide receiver depth chart, it's barren. No one. Their tight end depth chart, Cole Kmet, Sam Rushu, they drafted, yes, but I don't expect either of them to eat into Loveland, who is the de facto one. So, yeah, how are you feeling on Loveland there?
Oh, I absolutely love him. Again, last year you could get him, what was it, like tight end 13, 14? I think I
Something
picked him
crazy.
up. Like, I feel like, remember last year is Warren versus Loveland, and I was like, Warren just, he has the highest floor because they have no one else there. He's going to be the tight end one out of the gate. The Colts offense was humming, so he just had a fantastic start to his career. Whereas, Loveland, they still had Cole Kmet. They were in a timeshare. But Loveland, I think, is the better talent overall. I think he has the higher ceiling. I was saying he could be like prime Jimmy Graham, where he's like, he's pretty much a wide receiver. And like you said, we saw that later in the season and in the playoffs. His ceiling is so massive. So he's the guy. Again, I don't mind taking Loveland or Warren 3-4. I think that's basically my cutoff. I think once the top 4 tight ends are off the board, I'm out. Count me out. But I still think Loveland has the highest ceiling because, again, I would hate to see this, but if Burden misses any time, if Rowe misses any time, Loveland's values through the roof. So he has tight end 1 overall upside, pending injuries happening. But yeah, his upside is massive heading into year 2. And I think out of the gate, he's just going to be the guy. I think Cole Kmet's is going to kind of mix in, but I think Ben Johnson knows what he has in Loveland, and, it's wheels up for him this year.
Yeah, Cole Kmet, Roosh, they're there because they probably want to run a ton of 12 personnel, obviously with their depth. Wide receiver, I think they're going to run a lot of 13 personnel. They're going to get big. Makes me like the running backs, Swift and Monongai. But yeah, excuse me, the big 20-point week for Loveland was in week 17, so he did score in the fantasy playoffs. And from week 9 to 17, he was tight end 6 in points per game, more consistent than Kyle Pitts. Oh, actually 5. Yeah, I was looking. So Laporta only played 2 games in that stretch, so he doesn't really count. So you had a top 5 tight end. He's shown it already, that upside. So you're not really buying into what if. You're not buying into, if X, Y, Z happens. He already did it. He took over Kmet. Kmet was kind of the guy early on, but Loveland took over. His snaps increased. He's an incredible blocker, so they're not really going to take him off the field for anything. This isn't like a Dalton Kincaid situation. So yeah, I absolutely love getting Loveland.
Week 1 of the playoffs, 8 catches, 137 yards.
Yeah.
He's
a monster. He's a monster.
Yeah.
And the next guy, Harold Fannin. I know you said you want to take Brock Bowers and McBride, but I think what we saw with Fannin last year was pretty real. Dominant college producer. Is he like the highest fantasy scoring college tight end of all time? I know he was at Bowling Green, but he put up insane numbers.
Yeah, he was a monster. And he's part of the reason I wasn't drafting. Could you believe it? David Njoku was going like tight end 8 this time last year. So, coming out, like I knew he was going to be a beast. Again, he was a guy you could have added pretty much in every league at some point in the season, but it was clear from the get-go, he's a stud. So yeah. Where's he going right now? Is he tight end 6?
Tight end 7. Him and Pitts are basically tied in ADP. I'm looking at Underdog. He goes a little higher on ESPN, which we're going to get to in another episode. But he'll go between pick 90 to 110, let's say. So he's in that range depending on most formats. ESPN, he's in the 70s. Anywhere pick 90 to 110 for me, that's a smash on Fannin. Like you look again, 117 yards, 1,555 receiving yards, or 117 catches, 1,555 receiving yards, 10 touchdowns. And then he added another touchdown on the ground and 65 yards in college in his final season. He was a junior, and then last year he comes into the league and he dominates David Njoku, who did have an okay stretch to start the season. But yeah, 72 catches, 731 yards, 6 touchdowns, and a touchdown on the ground. They use him in these wildcat kind of like jet sweep kind of moves. Fannin, he's just a weapon. They added Boston. They added Casey Conception. Jerry Judy's there, yes. But Fannin's the one, in my opinion. He is the first, like with Loveland, I think it's the one in that offense. Is it the best offense? No.
No. And I think, but I do like Boston and Concepcion as prospects. It sounds like Boston's having a phenomenal camp. So I think they will eat into his target share a bit. But with no David Njoku there, he should be, an 85% routes run guy this year to kind of offset more target competition. Because that, the first part of the season, he was fighting for playing time. Let me ask you, I mean, the quarterback situation's an issue. Would you rather have Deshaun Watson or Shedeur Sanders start in week 1? Or just who would you rather have if you're a fan and owner?
I'd rather have them trade for like Mac Jones. Give up like 2/3, go get Mac Jones. Jameis Winston, bring him back. I would love that, obviously. But yeah, it's Shedeur. Shedeur had like a bad rookie season, obviously, but he was a Pro Bowler somehow. I don't know. I don't know the Pro Bowl rules anymore. But he averaged 6.6 yards per attempt. That's not terrible. That's better than Cam Ward. And he didn't have Casey Conception. He didn't have Denzel Boston. He's gonna throw his interceptions. He's gonna make his mistakes, but I think Shedeur would actually be an okay fantasy quarterback for a fantasy tight end or wide receivers because he's going to air it out. His arm isn't weak. It's just not very strong, but he's willing. I mean, what did you see from Shedeur? Like, are you open to Shedeur feeding your fantasy wide receivers and tight ends? Because I sure as shit don't trust Deshaun Watson.
No, I don't really trust either. I think Sanders, I mean, he was considered like a second round talent and then he fell to the 5th round. So yeah. I think that was kind of like off field stuff. And then the Browns didn't really give him a chance. They were forcing Gabriel down our throats for a few games before finally succumbing to Shedeur. So it's like he didn't really have a fair shake. They weren't really setting him up to play much last year. This year, it sounds like, he's getting first team reps. I think Deshaun is starting this week or next week and Shedeur's getting the other start for preseason. So they're actually making this a real QB battle. So he's getting plenty of reps with the first team. I do like the pass catchers a lot more this year. He has Fannin entering year 2. So I think he's set up a little bit better this year. It's still going to be a shaky offensive line, but they're going to be trailing most games. The defense should still be pretty good, but they lost Myles Garrett, so probably won't be elite. So, they're going to be trailing a bit more, throw a little bit more. So, I think Sanders will be better than people think. Still not, an above average quarterback. But I think either way, they'll probably be getting whoever's playing the best under center. I haven't even thought about a dream scenario of a Mac Jones or Jameis Winston getting traded there, but that would be absolutely fantastic.
Hey, Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins, if Mendoza takes over and they trade for
like
Kirk.
A mid-season.
Yeah.
I could
it's
see
not
that
crazy.
Too. I'd rather have Mac Jones or Jameis Winston would be probably the dream scenario. But yeah, like we can plan for these upside cases, but yeah, I think Watson or Sanders, really no preference on either one. I guess we'll see in the preseason. One of them could pop, and then there you go. I'd be more comfortable taking some of these guys. But having said that, I think Fannin is quarterback proof. He's an elite talent. He's the man now entering the season. He's the alpha at the tight end position and, overall. So I don't think you can really go wrong with him. Again, for me, it's like the range he's going, not really the player.
Totally. He was tight end 6 in points per game after the bye. They had a week 9 bye. So I'm all over Fannin. If I could get him in that pick 90 to 110 range, wherever he goes, wherever my pick is, I'd be very happy with that. Now we move on to the tight ends we hate. And you have one that is kind of counterintuitive to the hat you're wearing. I don't get what's going on here. It's really interesting, but Go lead us off. Who's your tight end you hate?
Yeah, it's definitely, I would say it's complicated. Not I hate him, but let's go with I hate Tucker Kraft. There, you like that? I love Kraft the player. Absolutely love him. I'm sure there's times this season I'll actually be betting a decent, good amount of money on his over or his touchdown prop. So I'll be invested in him at some point to do good. I just don't like taking tight ends in this range. I was looking at my tiers article from last year. I always call this kind of the frozen pond, where I have like my studs who I think, really set you apart at the position. After that, I have legit tight end one guys. Last year was Laporta, who, got hurt. That's not fair. Kelsey and Andrews really started to decline with age. TJ Hawk, I was like, I'm not drafting TJ Hawkinson, David Njoku, or Evan Ingram in any leagues. And then I'll just take, Warren or Loveland at the end of the draft, stream the position. So it's just a personal preference for me to avoid drafting tight ends in the 5 to 10 range, because at any given time you could pick up a league winning tight end. So I think sometimes you get kind of just stuck hanging on to them because, again, Tucker Kraft's an excellent tight end. I don't think he's going to be like a David Njoku, TJ Hawkinson, Evan Ingram bust at all. I just don't like hanging on to tight ends in that range when other guys are popping, and you just kind of have to like keep them. But with Kraft specifically, he is coming back from an ACL tear where, I'm assuming he'll be 100% and good to go week one. But there's a chance, he's not. He could be limited in some way. Could get off to a slower start, which isn't, great when you're drafting, significant draft capital to get him. Plus, with Kraft, he just has, really good touchdown upside. He's really good after the catch, but those two stats aren't as sticky year to year. So there's a chance, he might not catch as many touchdowns. He might not get as many yards after the catch. So there's some risks there. What was he, number 2 overall in points per game last year?
He was number 1 before the injury.
One.
Yeah,
Oh,
and he was a top 50 fantasy scoring player, including quarterbacks. Week 1 to 8.
Yeah, because week 9 he got cooked early on. So if you remove that, he was just ahead of McBride. At that time, I was screaming, he's a top 3 tight end. He's here to stay. So, I think it wouldn't be out of question if he maintains an elite touchdown rate, maintains an elite after the catch rate, and he's a top 3 tight end. That's absolutely in his range of outcomes. I'm not really gambling on tight end in that range, especially guys coming back from injury. So I love Kraft. I love Kittle when they're healthy, but just the fact that they're going into the season, kind of with question marks around that, enough reason for me to pass up on them. And then again, going into the season, kind of rolling the dice on a tight end, using the waiver wire. That's worked just fine for me the past, decade. So I'm just going to keep that up. But again, there's going to be some times I love Kraft and DFS and props and everything. Just this range specifically, I'm trying to just avoid it if I can.
Totally. Look, I do love Kraft, especially in half PPR formats where those touchdowns do come into play much heavier than PPR. I'm not in love in PPR, but if he goes after pick 90, I'm in. He goes in the 70 to 80 range typically. So yeah, I'm not in love with him in PPR formats in that range. Half PPR, best ball, I will absolutely take him because you don't really have to predict the touchdown weeks necessarily.
Right.
And they did get rid of Dubes. They got rid of Wicks. Matthew Golden, we don't really know what he is. Maybe he could be good. Maybe he's probably bad the way he was last year. Christian Watson gets hurt all the time. Jaden Reed's missed time with injury the last few years. Gets nicked up often. Luke Musgrave is the backup tight end. So it's not like they drafted a Sam Roosh, Oscar Delp, or whatever. It seems like they
crazy.
Sorry.
So like Musgrave was drafted, I think the same class as Kraft, ahead of him.
I think he was drafted higher.
So it reminds me of, remember Hayden Hurst and Mark Andrews? The Ravens took Hayden Hurst earlier, but I think early on in their careers, it's like, okay, Andrews is the better tight end. I think that's clearly what happened with the Packers. But Musgrave, he could fill in when needed. But yeah, Kraft is clearly the guy now. It's always interesting to me that they actually took Musgrave before Kraft.
Yeah, and I don't expect him to lead the team in targets if everyone's healthy, but he should be up there in that, like, I think the top 3 is going to be pretty flat in target rate. it's going to be so close that it really doesn't matter. It'll be like 20%, 18%, and like Kraft 17.5% or so. It's going to be something where it's negligible. And if an injury strikes, it has to consolidate more. Do I expect a hot start to the season for Kraft? No. And hey, look, maybe last year was a fluke. Jake Ferguson was tight end 3. Oronde Gadsden, who you mentioned, was tight end 7 points per game. Darren Waller was tight end 9. So maybe the early season spike was fluky, but he's maybe the best blocking tight end in football. He's like yak monsters we've seen. Maybe that is degraded with the ACL, but it wasn't as terrible of an ACL as, say, like Malik Neighbors or Javonte Williams in the past. So I'm a little optimistic, and I would be drafting him. And the guy I'm not drafting is Sam Laporta. Someone you loved last year, but a microdiscectomy on his back. Jameson Williams looked like a different wide receiver in the second half. Once Dan Campbell started calling plays, Jameson Williams got more involved. Amon-Ra St. Brown is healthy. Jahmyr Gibbs probably gets more involved in the receiving game this year. I don't love your boy Isaac Tisla, but he's there at least. And Sam Laporta, I don't know. I feel like he needs an injury to be someone you're confident starting weekly. Otherwise, he's kind of just a best ball guy, and I don't really want to touch him until, after pick 100. I would take Fannin, Pitts, Kraft, all of them ahead of Laporta, but I'd take Laporta ahead of like a Kincaid, who we know his injury history. How are you feeling on Laporta this year?
Yeah, I actually had him in this slot, and then I switched to Kraft, but same thing where he's just going in that range where I don't like to take a tight end, and I don't think he's a guy I targeted last year. His rookie season was like, if I don't get a top tight end, screw it, I'll just get someone like Sam Laporta later in the draft or pick him up on the waiver wire. And sure enough, he had a league winning season. So last year I think he was just below George Kittle, which was my cutoff last year. So I didn't draft him. Again, he got hurt, so we can't victory lap that. But the plus is he's in an elite offense. The downside is they have so many weapons that there's going to be some weeks where he's the odd man out, just the way it is. And looping back real quick to my guy, Isaac Tisla. I'm not going to take any Isaac Tisla slander here. Do not draft Isaac Tisla in any fantasy leagues. Maybe like a late round best ball. He is a touchdown betting. Like if you follow my touchdown bets last year, you'd be able to buy a decent chunk of a Tesla. Tesla, if you so want.
Partially used Tesla.
A
partially owned,
used Tesla. Tesla. You could probably buy with the touchdown winnings I had last year with him. But I digress. I agree. I think Laporta, he's a guy that there's going to be weeks where he's easily in my top 5, maybe top 3. But he's not a guy that I'm drafting because that's the range where tight end's such a crapshoot every week where the gap. The other point I want to make is like the gap from like the tight end 5 to the tight end 15 some weeks is like 1 to 2 points maybe. So it's just a position where it's very matchup dependent. Like, the guys that have a good matchup that week or their usage is kind of like increased because, wide receivers hurt. It's a very volatile position. It's very tough to rank each week because of that. So Laporta, I think, especially if you look at the, Yahoo, ESPN, the ADP, people are drafting him a little bit earlier because people are kind of panicking. They're like, I still want to get a good tight end when Bowers and Bride off the board. So people kind of reach for these very good tight end ones a little bit earlier than they should, where I'm just saying, don't panic, punt the position. There's going to be somebody out there that you can pick up that turns into the next, Laporta or Fannin or Loveland. I don't know who that is. But
we're gonna get into our sleepers.
Yeah,
we're gonna
get our sleeper, a little teaser. But someone's gonna pop up in season that you could pick up and be a tight end one. Pretty much anytime.
Totally. And I loved Laporta as a draft prospect. I loved him last year, but you have to adjust your priors when an injury like his back injury happens because you just never know. Football is such a brutal sport, and I just have to move on from Laporta. I'd rather bet on George Kittle coming off an Achilles. 20 to 30 picks later than I would Laporta off of this back surgery. But before we move on, don't forget that right now is the best time to check out Fantasy Labs. We've got new features this season like live draft tools, tiered player rankings, best ball stack analysis, and more. Check out the NFL season-long package at fantasylabs.com/subscribe and use the promo code FLEX20 for $20 off an annual subscription. That's FLEX20 for $20 off at fantasylabs.com/subscribe. Now, I hinted at the sleepers. Who's your first? I mean, I think we're only doing one each. So who is your fantasy tight end sleeper for this season going outside of the top 12?
Yeah, so unlike last year where I was just like, screw it, I'll just take Warren or Loveland later if I miss out on Bowers and McBride. I don't really see a young stud like those guys because Kenyon Sadiq, he has a ton of upside. Didn't love the landing spot, so I don't think he's a rookie. I'm looking to draft in like a 12-team league. So I'm going boring here. I'm going old. I'm going crusty. I'm going with Mark Andrews as the guy I just take at the end of the draft, begrudgingly, just to have a tight end for week one. Because, it's funny. You see Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce right around the tight end 12, tight end 13 range right now. Everyone's going for the shiny new object. Andrews and Kelce are probably cooked. But, Isaiah Likely's gone. So I think Andrews' snap share should be much, much higher. He's looking pretty fresh in camp from what I'm reading. I think early in the season, he has top 10 upside. I just did my week one rankings. He's my tight end 10. They're at Indy. He's going to be a top 2 target with Zay Flowers to start the season. So I think he's a safe play where I know he's going to be around a top tight end out of the gate. Then once a shiny object appears on the waiver wire, I have no problem ditching Andrews. So, I'm treating, tight end like a player. So I'm taking Andrews to start and then I'm kicking him to the curb when the time comes. Or Andrews is just back to being a top 5 stud. Who the hell knows? But, my goal is to just start the season with Andrews. And then again, I have no problem ditching him for somebody else, someone younger. And who that is, I don't know. It could be like Aronde Gatson could pop. We don't know what's going on in that situation. Again, Sadiq could pop. I like the guy that you're going to mention. There's a ton of guys where if they pop, I'm going to be the first one to grab them. And the guy with, Kraft and Laporta, they're not going to be picking up guys off the waiver wire. They're going to stick with their guys. So I think it gives you an advantage to just be willing to just cut bait initially. And I think early on, Andrews will give you a high floor, and then after that, go from there. But I think Andrews kind of makes sense as my last pick of the draft kind of guy to have a tight end if I do punt it. But looking to move on to bigger and better things once we get rolling.
Yeah, he's a year removed from an 11 touchdown season. So, I mean, that's his job. He looked terrible in the playoffs that year. He dropped the pass. And then last year, crazy stat. He had a longer rush than reception last year.
Yeah,
he had a 35-yard rush.
Was that his only rushing touchdown? I don't think they gave him a goal line.
Was that a touchdown? I know he scored a touchdown on the ground. I don't know if it was like a tush push, but maybe it was that. 48 yards on the ground, but his longest reception was 27 yards.
Yeah. I don't expect him to score long touchdowns, but they do give him the tush push play, right? And that was a trick play. They don't need a tush push play at the goal line because they have Derrick Henry. But if this were to ever happen, if Derrick Henry were to ever miss time,
don't say that. Don't say that.
I'm not wishing on that. I could absolutely see them using Mark Andrews at the goal line because Lamar Jackson, as good of one of the best running quarterbacks in NFL history, he doesn't really rush for touchdowns. When they get near the goal line, they don't like him running around as much. So every year he just gets, 3 or 4 rushing touchdowns. So it's not like, Justice Hill or Rasheen Ali would really be a good goal line back. So I could see Mark Andrews getting goal line work if Henry were to miss time, which
Adam Randall they added. He's pretty big. Oh. So I don't know. We'll see. I don't even know if he's going to make the team, but that's there's at least size there.
Yeah. They've had Lucas Scott's the fullback, but who was the fullback that he also played defensive tackle for them? Oh, Patrick Ricard.
Oh, yeah.
He would have been like a tush push threat or something, but that's beside the point. That's Andrews now. So he does have that kind of sneaky upside that may never happen, but it's at least there.
Yeah. And playing on the Ravens, touchdowns. I mean, Lamar has one of the highest touchdown rates as a quarterback in NFL history. Incredible passer. Like people underrate him as a passer because when you're yes, his volume is low, his passing yards are low yearly, but because his volume is low, but his efficiency is through the roof. When he is good, he is unbelievable. And who knows, maybe Declan Doyle gets the most out of Andrews and Lamar. And Lamar just staying healthy is the biggest thing. As long as Lamar doesn't get nicked up, this offense is going to cook. Losing Tyler Linderbaum does kind of concern me, but that's a center versus like a tackle, whereas like Andrews or like whatever tight end would have to play as that 6-0 line. He didn't look great last year. He looked pretty bad at times, but we've seen
Right.
crazier things have happened. Zach Ertz, like a year or two ago, looked he had multiple knee or lower body issues, and he came back. Zach Ertz was a fantasy monster 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And I thought he was completely washed. Like, I thought he should have been out of the league 2 years ago. His efficiency was terrible. He was still cooking.
How old was Ertz that year? Because I want to say he's
36.
Like, yeah. Because I mean, let's talk about age here. Mark Andrews is 30 years old. So if 30 is old, then I mean,
then I'm cooked at 32. So that's. I mean, he'll be 31 in September. So we're not. But like tight ends, we know historically can play later into their careers. It's not. I mean, what's his face? Mercedes Lewis. I don't even know if he's signed right now, but like, did he retire? He was playing until 41.
He keeps coming back. He is the NFL equivalent of the Vince Carter meme. I got one more in me. That's Mercedes Lewis. I think he's pushing 40. Now we're talking my range.
40 plus.
Yeah. I mean, he didn't really play much last year. He was on the Bears. I will say you do need Andrews to be somewhat decent this year because if Matthew Hibner scores 10 plus touchdowns, didn't we agree that you need another tattoo like a Raven?
Oh yeah, and Hibner. I mean, allegedly none of the tight ends look good in camp, but Mark Andrews, at least with the veteran, you're not scaling up. You're working your way back into like physique. Whereas the rookies, you would expect the rookies to come in like sharp, come in fit, come in like ready. Whereas like a vet, I can understand a vet slow playing, especially at Andrews' age. So I could forgive it. And I'm
out of shape or something.
I don't know if he just doesn't look good according to.
He doesn't look good.
Like none of the tight ends look good.
He put on like 15 pounds.
No. It just he doesn't look sharp, I guess.
Oh, okay.
But and like if you want, and if you do fade tight end, and I do agree, Andrews is a solid play, especially in half PPR leagues with the touchdown upside. Go get a Juwan Johnson. Get that week 13 bye for Andrews, get that week 8 bye for Juwan Johnson. Go play the matchups. I mean, you'd probably want to start Andrews more often just because he has the history, but Juwan Johnson last year, he was fantastic. And Chris Olave was healthy and he was cooking. So it's not like it took an Olave injury for Juwan Johnson to ball. Yes, Jordan Tyson does lower his ceiling, but Jordan Tyson again got hurt today, a hamstring issue. So if it's just Olave and Juwan in that receiving room for any game, Juwan is pretty much an auto start. He's probably going to be in my top 10 tight ends weekly if Jordan Tyson is out or if Chris Olave is out, but probably Tyson based on what we're seeing right now. Juwan goes right around tight end 20. I think he's tight end 19 free. He probably will go undrafted in a bunch of ESPN leagues or Yahoo leagues. I would hope if you wait on tight end, if you get a craft that you're kind of concerned with the injury about, I would absolutely grab a Juwan Johnson later. Last year, I mean, he was a top tight end in fantasy scoring. He was tight end 9 in overall scoring. But yeah, he had some weeks towards the end. Fantasy playoffs, 16.9 points, 13.5 points. He had a 19-point game, but he had a bunch of like solid floor games with like 12 to 15 points throughout his season. So does he have the highest upside like a Loveland? Does he have Andrews touchdown upside? I don't think so, but Shuck was willing to air it out. Yes, they're probably going to run more with ETN, but are you willing to buy a Juwan Johnson this year?
Yeah, I actually love this, and I would have written him down in our outline, but you had mentioned him before me a couple weeks ago, so I knew you were going to go here, so I let you have him, but I am with you 100% on this. I think, last year he was one of those guys that like early in the season I was using him because Taysom Hill was out, Foster Moreau was out, everybody was out, so he was running around like 95% of dropbacks. I believe that was when Spencer Rattler was quarterback. So you can only expect so much with Rattler under center. But he was popping, and I think Shuck's going to be pretty good in year 2. We could get kind of a year 2 leap for him in this offense. There's no more Taysom Hill, no more Foster Moreau. They have Noah Fant, but I don't think he's going to mix in enough to really matter. So I think Juwan Johnson's the guy, should be out there 70-80% of Shuck's dropbacks. And you kind of hinted at it. Jordan Tyson's kind of injury prone. He already has a hamstring injury. Chris Olave has a concussion history, so there's a decent chance one or both these guys are missing time at times this year, and he's going to be a top 2 target when that happens. I don't think Vele. We'll see how Bryce Lance looks, but they don't really have anybody else that's going to step up. So Juwan Johnson has a pretty clear path to be a top 2 target at times. And like you said, he's basically undrafted. You could just add him later on. But I think there's going to be weeks in the season where he's going to be popping and be a top 12 option. So he's one of the guys I have on my Rolodex where in season he's going to be on speed dial, and you could if you just punt tight end, he's one of the guys you have access to. So yeah, I love him here. I think he has way more upside than people realize.
Yeah, they added Noah Fant, and they drafted Oscar Delp in the 3rd round, but Oscar Delp did not produce at all in college. He might be more of a blocking tight end for them, or he might be someone like an occasional explosive play they want to throw to. But yeah, Olave and Tyson come with a ton of risk. Juwan Johnson might be, again, the de facto 1 on that team some weeks. Who knows? God forbid, obviously, Olave gets hurt too, because, yeah, we've seen with Tyson, I think he's had like 3-4 injury scares in the last couple months with that hamstring. He missed time. He was like during the draft process, he couldn't test. I like Tyson. I'm willing to draft Tyson still, but I really want a discount now. And overall, I'm just more willing to draft a Juwan Johnson. And that'll do it for us here on Fantasy Flex from Action Network and Fantasy Labs. Don't forget to use promo code FLEX20 at FantasyLabs.com for $20 off an annual subscription. On the next episode, we'll be diving into Yahoo and ESPN ADP discrepancies. So make sure you subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen so you don't miss anything next preseason or this preseason. For Sean and myself, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.